All right, welcome to the XML Upload webinar from Ohio Housing Finance Agency. My name is Rachel Grass. We'll be covering a lot of information about the new XML Upload process today, and hopefully as we're going through everything, your questions will be answered. If not, we'll try and answer them throughout the session, and we'll go through any remaining questions at the end. You can also submit any questions you have on XML or DevCo to the DevCo help desk for assistance. We'll start with what has changed with the new XML upload process. There are 3 items or steps that must be done with the new XML upload. We're using the NAMA 4.0 XML file. Previously, we're using 2.0. The PowerPoint today, and which is included in the handouts, has a link to the schema for the 4.0. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can access it there. With the new XML process, you also have to update the building style information on each building. This is a new step related to the utility allowances. But once you do it one time, you won't have to keep doing it every time you do an XML upload. And as with previous XML files, you have to complete your utility allowances before you do the upload. And starting with the 2019 tenant activity, we will be requiring uploads monthly, as well as prior to any review. So the new features for the XML, we improved the general usability, so it's better recognition of when the upload is successful. The XML screen will not time out as much as it used to previously, and it shouldn't time out at all. The unit status is better identified between events, so there shouldn't be as many errors related to it being an occupied or a vacant unit. There's improved recognition of transfer of household members from event to event. So as you're adding new events into DevCo with the XML upload, it recognizes the household members from the previous events. Thanks for the reminder that I hadn't pushed play yet on the screen. I'm so sorry. So in the handout, you'll be able to see the first couple slides that I already went through. Sorry about that. Also with the upload, it's more flexible than it used to be. You won't have the data overwritten every time you do an upload. It keeps anything that was already added in for the year and compares the new file to what's already in DevCo. So you can have an upload that is for a month. You could have an upload that is for a week's worth of tenant information. And with the file, it'll compare old and new together. We've also expanded what event types are recognized. The initial certification was already recognized in DevCo, but it was going in as a recertification instead of the correct event of a move-in. Interim events have been able to go into DevCo as well, and by default, they're treated as rent updates in most cases now, but there's some intelligent design to how it picks those and what event type is selected, and we'll get into that more in a bit. There's also gross rent events. They'll be treated as rent updates now through the XML upload, and the market rate units are better able to be imported now. So with those interim recertifications, or in the XML file, they're called adjustments, the process looks at if any new household members were added, and those will be treated as composition updates. If the rent changed for the household, then it'll be considered a rent update on the adjustment events. And if there wasn't any changes to the household members or rent, then it's considered a student update as it comes through in the XML file. We still recommend that you export events after completing an upload if you have any adjustment type events in there, because just to make sure that they went through correctly. And as a reminder, the event types that are possible in DevCo are move-ins, move-outs, recertify, transfer out, and transfer in, composition update, rent update, and student update. So we'll get started now in DevCo. So you start from DevCo from the home page. You can scroll to the bottom of the page, and DevCo will be a link at the bottom. From the DevCo page, you have all sorts of quick links on the right. I highly recommend that everybody looks at the compliance user guide as well as the videos. There's also a link to the DevCo help desk on the main DevCo page. Because the XML upload feature is new, we're actively working on updating the compliance user guide with the XML upload process. So for now, we have some temporary documents up there to help everyone through the XML upload process. And it's the same documents that were attached in the webinar. So we'll go ahead and log in. Today we're going to be using the test system, as we're still doing some testing on the XML upload process, and we needed to use a real life example of data. So once you log into DevCo, you can go to the tenant income certification and owner certification link. From there, you have the property listings page. We're going to, so we're using Putnam Howell today, and as you can see, it has the 2018 and 2019 reporting years available. DevCo will always have the current year and either the previous or next year available, depending on what time of the year it is. So we'll click on the 2018. The first step with the XML upload is to actually review the information in DevCo. So we want to make sure that the buildings and the units are all set up correctly, and this is especially important if it's the first time that an XML upload is being done on a property. So we have our bin over on the left and all of the units. With the new XML upload process and with the updates to the utility allowances, we also need to check what the building style information is on the bin. And so it's listed here as style, and it's already marked as low rise. When you roll over the box, a message will pop up with the definitions for what each type of style is. So that's already marked. And now we'll want to make sure that the utility allowances are also in DevCo. So we go to the right side and click on utility allowances. Here we see that it has the 2017 and the 2016 rent schedules listed. It has a 7/1/2017 date, so these would actually be active most likely all the way through half of 2018. You'd want to make sure that you actually add the 2018 utility allowance. I'm going to skip over it for now just so I can show some examples of errors that happen later when we are actually uploading the file. But I will take a quick look at the utility allowance screen since there are some new features there. With the new utility allowance setup, we've added the building style field into the utility allowance also. So we know that it was a low rise. So we should update that. With the new changes to the utility allowance after the verified date, the effective date, the building style, bedrooms, and utility allowance type are all listed, it'll automatically create a description for us. So you can see here that it has the description's been updated. It lists the verified date and then the building style, what the bedrooms are, what the allowance type is, and then what the effective date is. This is so that you can more easily identify each utility allowance from the drop-down, and it's more clear what it applies to. So I'll go ahead and save that. And now we'll click on Return to Property Details. So from here, we're now ready to start the actual upload itself. So we'll click on Import Events. Much like before, you still are going to click to browse and locate your file on your computer. And then we'll click Upload. And as a reminder, the file now can be for any length of time. Since right now annual owner reporting is going on, most likely you will be uploading the whole reporting year for 2018, but you'll also have upcoming your first upload potentially for January of 2019. So now we have our list of items that came up with the XML upload. We're calling this the XML Activity Log. Some of them are potentially compliance related, but most of these are a list of changes that happened with the XML file, or if there was any issues during the upload. And I'm going to switch back over to PowerPoint. With the XML Activity Log, we have 4 different levels of messages that'll come up. There's the project level error. It'll disallow the whole XML file. Unit level errors. The unit that has the issue will not upload in the file, but the remaining XML file will upload. The warning, it'll allow the import, but it'll show a message about any data changes that happened or a possible potential compliance issue. Info also allows the import of the whole file, but it also shows a message about data that was changed, removed, or skipped. So with our file that we just completed, we have several unit errors listed. So those will be events where it did not transfer for the unit. And then we also have several warnings. So we'll start with the warnings. The income designation was changed from 10% to 30%, as well as some of the other examples with different percents. This designation was changed because the limit that was selected is not available in DevCo. It's not on any of the OFA funding that's related to the project. And it's going to the next highest limit that is available from the restrictions of the restrictive covenants or the funding agreements. So based off this, the property has 30s and 50% limits as options. Similar thing is happening with the rent designations. The property doesn't have 10% or 40% as options with any of the OFA funding. The 87% is a more unique case. It's actually switching it basically to read as a market unit based off of switching it to a 100% limit. And then also in the warnings, we have the subsidy was changed to NA. This is the case where there wasn't a subsidy type provided, so the field was blank in the XML file, and it was changed to NA for DevCo because there is no blank option for the subsidy type inside DevCo. Then there's also the unit type was changed to program unit. This occurs when the unit type that was specified in the XML file is something other than a program, market, or employee unit. So it's defaulting it to program unit if it has a unit type that isn't recognized. So the top error, moving on to the unit errors, the top error that's listed here is stating that, as we can see with the certification date, that it has a 2019 event in the file. Because we're in the 2018 reporting year, it can't upload that 2019 event. We do have one error message here for the unit where it's talking about whether the unit was occupied or vacant. This would be making sure that you have all of the events that you need in a new file, and this could be corrected by making sure that you have all the, if there was a missing event. Then there's two different errors related to utility allowances. This first one is talking about whether the correct information was entered related to utility allowances. This usually occurs if the building style information isn't updated entirely, but it could also happen from one of the other related fields in the utility allowance aren't matching off. The second error related to utility allowance is specific to the unit having Section 8 or other rental assistance, and the utility allowance types aren't matching off with what's possible for properties with rental assistance. And then we have another one where it's specifying that a event type was not recognized. And that has the event type of C. I actually don't know what the C stands for. But as it's stating, it's not one of the recognized events. Are there any questions? I've noticed everybody's been pretty quiet so far. And even though we're seeing a list of potential issues or just a log of what's occurred with the file, at this point on this screen, the XML file has actually already been uploaded with the events that were marked as being removed are not uploaded. So we have 3 separate events that did not upload. Some of them have a couple issues on them. And since we did have one come up where it said the event type was not valid, just as a reminder, again, it's rent updates, student updates, and composition updates that come through as adjustments. And they most likely are listed as interim recertifications in the compliance software that they come from. All right, there are some questions now. So we have one question about how we would fix some of these errors. In the case of the warnings, there shouldn't be any step that's needed, but you should check the export just to make sure that everything uploaded as you expected for any of the ones that have warnings. For the error messages, the one where the event type was not valid, you'll have to make sure that the event type is correct and one of the event types that can be used in DevCo. So just so I can keep this list of errors, I'm going to click print. So now I have a copy of that to reference back to later. So we can take a look at some of these other events to see how they can be resolved. With the occupied and vacant unit, we'll go ahead and check that one. So this event is saying that it's an occupied unit, but part of that was related to the issue of it being an incorrect event type. If, for example, it had listed a move-in event instead of the event marked C, then it would be the case that it's missing a move out. So that's how you would fix the issue of it having the occupied or vacant status. You need to figure out if you're missing a move out or a move in or some other event type. All right, we'll take a look at this utility allowance error where it's talking about Section 8 or the housing choice voucher. And that the Public Housing Authority utility allowance was not included in DevCo is basically what it's saying there, that this unit was identified as having Section 8 or the housing choice voucher, and it did not have the PHA utility allowance. So we'll go back to the main screen, and we can see that we have the HUD rent schedule selected. I will be double checking to make sure that that utility allowance error is correct. That's part of why we haven't made the system entirely live yet for XML uploads. We had some early testing issues where it was identifying one of the rental assistance types with the incorrect utility allowance. All right, the next question up on the list is about errors with the 2019. So I'll pull up that error list again. So this case, this was a 2019 event that was trying to be added to the wrong year. You would be correcting anything related to 2019 when you're actually uploading in the 2019 year. The next question was again about the utility allowances and what will be used for project-based voucher. I will be double checking on that as we just recently had some discussions on which are the correct options for the utility allowances. The XML file is meant to select the utility allowances for you in most cases, as long as there's enough information available. All right, I'm looking through some of the other questions. So we have a question about why the income designation was changed from 40% to 50%. And it's changing because the restrictions specific to the property do not include 40%. Same applies with the 10%. There aren't any properties or restrictions of any sort with OFA that go down to 10%. Some newer properties may have 40% in the future, but none currently do. The next, so we have, I think, a follow-up question related to the income designations, asking about what about other funding sources. With everything with DevCo, it's concerned about what's required for the actual OFA funding program. So your tax credit, OFA home funding, Ohio Housing Trust Fund, and the other fundings. We have a question on, does one site or real page have the new report, the 4.0 available? I think most of the softwares have 4.0 available at this point. You'd have to double check if your specific compliance software package does. Where this Ohio Housing Finance Agency is a little behind in moving away from the 2.0 standard, so most already have the 4.0 available. And I had a couple of people respond back that yes, OneSite and RealPage both have 4.0 available. We don't have a particular date set for when the monthly upload needs to occur with the XML files at this point. One of the other OFA staff members has responded back about the monthly upload requirement, and as soon as possible after the month is over is our current suggestion. We have a great question coming up here, and I did get a bit ahead of myself. It's asking, so are the corrections made by going into the individual units in DevCo, or do we have to fix it in the property software and then re-upload the entire XML file? So corrections can be made either in DevCo or in the property management software. With the XML upload, you don't have to re-upload the entire file that you just did. You can just select the units that came up as having unit errors and generate a new XML file if you're correcting it in the compliance software to upload. We'll be giving out more guidance as we finish up the testing on how to resolve the most common errors that are coming up, and whether it's best to update it in the property software or in DevCo. But technically speaking, it can be, in most cases, be updated in either place. So we had a question related to the example of if it was missing a move out. That could be updated in DevCo as just adding the move out directly in DevCo. or it could be done by including a move out event from the software in a separate XML upload. We are actively working on figuring out when the official go live date will be for the XML upload. I don't expect it'll be any later than the end of the week. We're going to be having some discussions after the webinar recapping the most recent set of testing to see where we're at. I have a question on if a recert has to be corrected due to income or some other issue, will the system accept the corrected cert? There is a few different fields that it looks for to see if anything has changed on, and it will try and pull over some corrections to recerts. If you have a particular case that you have of that, we could try testing it to make sure that it's working as we expect. We haven't had any cases come up in any of the files we've tested so far. All right. So I think some of the remaining questions are related to the final steps. We did that import, and one of the last things that you want to do with any time you're doing an XML upload is to export the events. This is how you confirm what was actually uploaded from the XML file into DevCo. With this particular file, we ended up only having a few events actually import. So I clicked the Export Events button, and I'm also clicking the Export Event button at the bottom of the screen. This is a quick way to see everything that's in there for the reporting year that you're working on. It comes up as an Excel file, so you can filter and sort it however you would like or highlight information in it. I'm going to filter it just so we can easily see how many events actually uploaded. So we actually only had 5 events upload. Or, yeah. And you can use this same export feature, whether you did the XML upload. Sorry, I have to log back in. You can use the Export Events button that's on the right to check what's been entered in DevCo with manual entry or doing imports. And so you could see quickly what events were entered or if anything was missing, and then figure out if you needed to generate another XML file. Or if it was one or two things missing, possibly just manually correcting them. So we have a great question on utility allowances. It's asking if a particular building has two different unit types, how would the utility allowance be entered then? They can be entered as separate utility allowance. We'll actually have to talk. Gina, send me an email. We can actually talk through it, because the thought was that each building overall has a unique type to it, but we can talk about that more and figure out which building style will work best. There's also a mention here related to doing XML uploads and whether OFA will be checking the data monthly. And there's a comment of other states that currently do. Our main concern is that keeping the data up to date in DevCo with what's occurring at the property. But we don't have anything set where we would be confirming that everything that was submitted for the month is correct or in compliance at this time. And so we have another question that came in. If an award number has hyphens in it in DevCo, is that how it should be in our software? The manual says, referring to our compliance user guide, says that hyphens should not be used, but that they wanted to double check for the tax credit awards. DevCo will be checking based off of how the award numbers are listed in DevCo. So we have a tax credit property here, and it has the 6-digit number without a hyphen. All of the tax credit awards should be set up without a hyphen in them inside DevCo. Are there any more questions, or does someone want to walk through one of the features? Again, the XML upload process has been simplified so that there's less screens to go through as you're doing the upload. And hopefully the new set of activity log that is created provides better detail on where the issue is, and we'll be working on additional guidance on how each item can be fixed. We have a question about how to get access to DevCo for a property, specifically one that went live last year. So I'm returning to the property listings page. From there, you have my profile. From this area, you can request new access to properties that you don't have already, whether it's a brand new property or an existing one that you might be newly managing or something like that. If it's a brand new property, it has to have the buildings and units as well as place and service data information available in DevCo. So the owner or developer would have had to work with our planning, preservation, and development department on filling in all the building and unit information. If that's not in there, it cannot be made available in DevCo Online for compliance. But you can email the DevCo help desk and we can help you through the process of getting a new property listed in DevCo. And one last thing I will do is pull up the full list of errors or activity items that are possible. So I'm going to the compliance user guide page. You can also access it from the main DevCo compliance page under the annual owner reporting. The preliminary XML activity log list. Currently, there are about 30 different possible types of messages that can come up related to the XML. There are a few that are project level errors. Those are related usually to transfers or if the bin is not matching up or if a unit does not exist, as well as if the reporting year identified in the XML file does not match the year that's you're trying to upload into. And there's also one for if the project number does not match. There's also a few related to some of the other fields around birth dates, social security numbers, some of those key fields that if the information isn't in there correctly, it can look like somebody's duplicate. There's a duplicate copy of a person in the event or things like that. So they'll come up as issues. So we had a question come up about doing the monthly upload. What would happen if they had an event that was already added in the file? Would it overwrite things, or would it say that the event was already there? Roughly is what was asked. I will go back to the import events and show what will happen if an event is listed that's already in the system. So I'm just going to upload the same file, and it should come up with 5 messages related to events already being there. So we have this new message that's come up that says the event did not import, that it already exists in DevCo. This is what will happen in most cases if the event was already in DevCo. All right, are there any final questions? If the event is already in DevCo, it just drops that specific event that is listed here. So in this case, it's the 4 recertifications that are listed and the move-in. Yes, there will be a message going out to everyone when the XML upload is active. We had a follow-up question related to if there was an event in the system but a change was made to it. It depends on what sort of change occurred, whether the new XML upload process can identify that it needs to be added or not. But if you have a specific example of that, please send it to us and we can test it to see how it works, John. It would be great to go over that in more detail. We haven't had any examples of it yet. All right, this concludes our webinar on the new XML upload process. If you have any questions or concerns, you can submit them to the DevCo help desk. And thank you for watching.